Ready to pop the question? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds, and they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code WELCOME to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code WELCOME at BlueNile.com for $50 off. BlueNile.com.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
Looking for a fun way to win 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/play100 and use code play100. That's code play100 at prizepicks.com/play100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your Champions League takeaway here straight after the Champions League games on Wednesday night. My name is Jack Collins and I'll be your host today, and joining me is our transfer guru, Champions League guru, everything guru, Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
I'm your Rank Squad mate. That's what I am, mate. I'm your pal from the Rank Squad. Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. It was an interesting night. I wouldn't say it's one of the best Champions League nights I've ever seen, but there's been plenty of storylines. I think it's been one of the best Champions League weeks we've ever seen. It wasn't one that set the world alight with storylines, but there's been enough to discuss, I thought. Yeah. We'll get through an episode, I can tell you that. There's enough to talk about. Yeah, we'll start on tonight's Wednesday action, and then I'm going to stick the boot into Man United later in the show, so that's worth hanging around for itself. Yeah, it absolutely is. Let's start with the early kickoff tonight, and one of the early kickoffs. Let's start with Barcelona, who won 2-1 against Shakhtar Donetsk at the Olympic Stadium in Barcelona. And my big takeaway, DJ, is that La Masia is back. Fermin Lopez ran this game. He absolutely ran this game. He scored Barcelona's second, set up Barcelona's first with a volley that crashed against the crossbar. And Ferran did very, very well to put away, to be fair to him. He also hit the other post, had a goal disallowed for offside, and was just generally absolutely brilliant. And you kind of see all these kind of moments when we're talking about Gavi being out with suspension. We're talking about Pedri being out. Obviously, Pedri wasn't a La Masia graduate per se. He joined from Las Palmas. But the amount of youth coming through in this setup, and obviously we saw Marc Guiu score at the weekend, the winner against Athletic Club. He could have scored here as well. Casado came on in the midfield. We know they brought Romeu back, who's a La Masia graduate. Balde came on. It's just this constant stream of talent. And I've even gone into Lamine Yamal, who actually had one of his quieter games. Yeah, exactly, mate. I mean, obviously it was all about Guiu at the weekend, but attention quickly has turned to another product straight out the academy, a 20-year-old this time. So in Barca terms, he's a bit of a veteran, really, isn't he, in terms of age? But in terms of how many games he's played, he's certainly not. But he's been a revelation with some of his performances so far that we've seen. And to get man of the match in the Champions League means he's now leveled up. He's gone up a stage, and now we can start expecting to see more from him. Fantastic goal, Loved seeing the replays of it too. Like just a lovely moment. Could have had at least one more goal, certainly. But just a brilliant all-round display from him. And Ferran Torres was really good as well. Probably joins him in taking the honours here. But you're right to point out La Masia as the real theme of Barcelona at the moment. Obviously, like they're using their youth products to get them out of jail when other teams are relying on players that typically cost a lot of money, and Barcelona have got those too, but they're using the youngsters to good effect at the moment, and we're starting to get a taste too, obviously, of what's going to be coming in future years. So a great result. Obviously, Barcelona are playing against Real Madrid at the weekend, which is getting tastier by the day, to be honest with you. I mean, I know it's not like one of the greatest encounters of all time that we're going to see between those two teams, but it's definitely becoming more intriguing.
Yeah, definitely. I thought so. It was a really good first half from Barcelona, I thought, and they really dominated across the course of it. And in the second half, they got a little bit lackadaisical. They probably should have got a third goal, didn't get it, got caught on the break for Shakhtar to pull one back, and it probably made it a little bit nervier than they would have hoped for. You'd imagine you're looking at Real Madrid yesterday and thinking exactly the same thing about their game with Braga, in that they would have hoped to have killed that off and not had to deal with the kind of onslaught at the end, but both have had to do that. So obviously they're a day apart. That might have an impact, but generally they've had pretty similar midweeks, I think, when you kind of look at this. But I got to say, it really was kind of, we've had Yamal's breakout moment where he became Spain's youngest scorer, he became Barcelona's youngest debutant in the Champions League, all of these kind of awards that have been going his way. And Fermi Lopez was kind of the guy who jumped out in pre-season, right? Because he scored that brilliant goal in El Clasico, in the friendly El Clasico, if there is such a thing, in the States. And he scored a wonder goal there, and everyone was like, okay, who the hell is this kid? But, 12 of this squad today were La Masia graduates. That is incredible. And as you say, Barcelona have spent money. They have activated those financial levers. We're seeing big names. Joao Felix played, on the other flank. So it's not that Barcelona are doing cheap deals for nobodies. They are still bringing in stars. But I just thought that for him to step up there and make that difference in a midfield which looked a little bit shaky at times. Romeo got caught out for the Shakhtar goal. You'd imagine there'll be kind of wholesale changes in here before El Clasico in those kind of regards. But with all of that said, for a young man to step up, and in a game where, as you say, few others really did. Barcelona were good, but the standout displays were very much Fermin and Ferran, and maybe that's going to become a thing. Maybe the two Fs are going to be a couple of boys that make a difference regularly for Barcelona. And I think it changes kind of how you approach the Clasico, because I don't think Fermin will start this game. But that said, you now know that you can throw him on there with 20 minutes go on, 20 minutes left, 25 minutes left, and you know that he's going to put in a performance for you because of what he's done in his brief Barcelona career so far. And that's got to be something that Xavi, can fall back on time and time again in these moments. And there are going to be games after El Clasico where Barcelona have less pressure on them. And the ability for these players, even if it's injury crisis forced, to actually have that faith in them and to drop them into these situations and feel like they are flying in these situations, it is a massive plus. And La Masia, the production line, feels hugely like it is right back on track.
Yeah, and while we're talking about emerging talent, let's give a shout out to Sudakov, who scored the goal for Shakhtar. This is a player that we're all going to be hearing a lot more about. I've been writing about him recently because I've been speaking to a couple of people in the game who, a lot of scouts are watching him basically. They've had their eye on Sudakov for a while now, obviously given Shakhtar's awkward situation in footballing terms, let alone world terms, because of what's gone on in Ukraine. He's been very limited in what he's been able to do in terms of being able to hit his ceiling and growth potential. So he's been held back a little bit, but he's had a lot of people looking at him. Took his goal well here, but he's a player that he's just so easy on the eye. I know that Arsenal have got an eye on him. Man City have got an eye on him. Brighton have got an eye on him. Juventus really like him. So Sudakov, he's 21. Definitely. You'll be hearing more about this guy potentially in January. I wouldn't completely rule out the fact that he could go then, but most likely, I think the end of the season we'll be seeing this lad get a big move.
Interesting. Yeah, it was his first Champions League goal. He's had a couple of years where he hasn't not broken out. That wouldn't be fair considering the situation around him. But I think he lit up a couple of unders tournaments a little while back, and everyone was like, "Oh, this kid could be something." And he's gone that stage from 19 to 21, and we're not talking about players are getting old here because he's 21 years old. But equally, when you see Lamine Yamal coming in at 16 and you see Mark Yu coming in at 17, you're like, oh, okay, these guys have got 4 years on you. You're going to have to step up, and he did today. So, yeah, some credit there as well. Let's move on from Barcelona. And I know you had an eye on Newcastle against Dortmund, which ended 1-0 to Borussia Dortmund. But I got a text from my brother saying it was the maddest 1-0 he's ever seen in his entire life.
It was a very, very entertaining game, mate. And I'd say one big takeaway from it would be that it was great to see two teams who know what a privilege it is to play Champions League football. I think that we can all take this level of football for granted at times, and the teams that we're often watching are just used to being there. And while Dortmund, have a certain expectation to be on this stage, and Newcastle have been craving the day they got back here, I think Dortmund still appreciate what it means to be competing at this level. And obviously this group is so competitive. They're in Group F along with PSG and AC Milan. It was billed as the group of death, and it's absolutely living up to its billing. I mean, it's still open. PSG look like they're going to win the group. They're top at the moment because they got a 3-0 win over AC Milan tonight, which is a big win for them. But yeah, Newcastle have lost 1-0 to Borussia Dortmund. They play each other again very quickly for the return fixture over in Germany, and it's a match with so much hanging on it now. Mecha was the guy that proved the difference here. Very intriguing. He is a player that Newcastle themselves looked at signing as part of their big old Saudi overhaul. He went on to Dortmund. It was an unbelievable goal. Like Schlotterbeck brilliantly wins the ball back. They break away, and then Schlotterbeck tees up Nemecha for the goal, and he takes it absolutely superbly. What I would say is that probably there was just that. Look, Newcastle have been outstanding, and they could definitely have got something out of this game. There was loads of chances from them. There were just moments in the game where perhaps they just don't have the experience yet of these games, or the players there. Isak came off early, and there were just moments thinking, they just haven't quite got the players that can control this moment or make the most of this moment. And such a thin line between success and failure on this stage. And Newcastle, look, I'm not taking too much away from here because they're doing great. Like, to be back in the Champions League and actually competing, they're doing great,
as well, right? They're on the same points as Borussia Dortmund, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And this is still very open.
And it's very open, but it just feels like Newcastle just maybe turn it up one more level when you're there. Like they're just slightly under. I mean, Anthony Gordon I thought was great. I mean, he did get dispossessed for the goal, but I'm going to hold that against him. I thought Gordon put in a really good performance all round. I mean, mate, it was pouring down with rain. I mean, the conditions were atrocious, but it was. Your brother saying it was a maddest game, mate. It was so into it. The first half was so entertaining. It was so open, and that's what I mean. Like, you could just see what it meant to both of them to be out there and to know. I think it's helped by knowing what's up for grabs here. Like, they've both got a massive opportunity here to make the knockouts of the Champions League, and it's great that Newcastle aren't willing to just like sit deep and hit someone on the break. Like, they're willing to open up a little bit. And when I talk about not having that now, maybe that's part of their problem. Maybe they should make themselves a bit more stern, but they go for it.
Wouldn't be as fun.
They press
high. It would be
high.
nowhere near as fun. Shouts out Newcastle. Shouts out Eddie Howe.
Exactly. Tonali played. Tonali came off the bench. And
could be the last time we see him for a long time.
It could be, yeah. So Tonali with a 10-month ban pending. I'll tell you what, he kept it at 1-0 because there was a moment when Dortmund looked like they were going to score, and Tonali produced this unbelievable, kind of like a back-heeled clearance. Superb it was. But yeah, I was thinking as I was watching it, I was like, we might not be seeing this lad again for a while. But yeah, it was a good game, mate. But I think that the underlying takeaway is that match now, going back to Dortmund for a big head-to-head, basically, it's probably determining which team joins PSG in the next round.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Newcastle will look at that and obviously will hope that Isak's injury isn't too serious. But, from the bits I caught on the goal show, it wasn't one of the ones I was keeping full eyes on at this point. And maybe it should have been, but I knew you were covering it, so I thought I'd let it slide a little bit more. But there just seemed a couple of opportunities for Wilson where he didn't, he isn't Alexander Isak. They're very different players. And I don't really mean that as a kind of criticism of him, to be honest. They're just very different players. And you think if Isak's on there, maybe Newcastle score, maybe at 1-1, this game opens right up and anyone can win it. And look, we saw that from both sides. Yeah. But it would have just given it a new lease of life. And St. James's Park was trying to suck the ball into the net at the Gallagher end by the end. But, not to be. But it kind of really kicks Dortmund's, season into life. And I saw a thing beforehand that Borussia Dortmund have the most points per game across all competitions in 2023 of any club in the top 5 leagues in Europe. More than Man City, more than Atleti, who had a brilliant, obviously, second half of last season and a good start to this season. So, Edin Terzic is going to be, last year will be remembered for the moment of missing the title, but it is worth remembering that whilst Borussia Dortmund haven't been sensational at the start of this year in the Bundesliga, they are still grinding out results. And there is something about this team that has a bit of resolve about it. And I think it's easy to forget when you look at the shiny new toys in the Bundesliga. Obviously, everyone's very excited about Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen. Stuttgart coming from nowhere to suddenly be right up amongst it is really cool. Harry Kane being at Bayern is interesting. Borussia Dortmund are still there or thereabouts. And I wouldn't write them off just yet if they're producing performances like this.
No, what I would say, that goal, this is their third Champions League game of the season. That was their first goal of the season in the Champions League. Mm-hmm. I tell you what, you weren't sure it was coming. There was a double save that Nick Pope had pulled off from Marlon and Fulkrug, I think it was. Extraordinary, it was unbelievable, this double save that Pope made, and so it was very difficult to find the breakthrough. But this is another story of this group, because as I say, PSG are top and they're also the top scorers in this group. But yeah, Dortmund have only scored once. Newcastle scored 4 times in this group, and AC Milan have not scored a goal yet in the Champions League. So again, another reason that Newcastle will be optimistic if they can go to Germany and get some sort of result, that they're actually going to make it through.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you want to flip to the other game in this group, that PSG Milan game? Because this was a thumping win for PSG and one that felt very needed. And obviously 3 goals, very, very smart. All of them, I thought. Had another one ruled out for offside. PSG starting to find some gears. And this Milan side, back-to-back losses to Juventus and PSG now. Now, no one's going to hold that kind of result against Milan, I don't think, especially with the red card at the weekend. But they're 2 kind of results that are a little bit like, ooh, don't want to see a knockout blow here, because that feels like Milan on the canvas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a big win. 3-0 is resounding and convincing, and Milan in the first half just offering very little. There was a couple of flashes, one from Leao in particular, that you thought might give them some belief and some momentum in the game. But yeah, Milan just lack that drive and that belief that they're going to score goals, and they're just blunt, mate. It's a bit like watching Fulham at the moment, to be honest. Would you watching AC Milan in the Champions League? They just haven't got that verve about them. And Mbappe scores a great goal to put them in control. Takes it brilliantly, and then once Koulibaly makes it 2-0. Their game's dead, to be honest. There was no way in that moment that AC Milan were coming back from it. They wrapped things up late on with a third, but it was actually more good work. Zaire Emery, by the way. We've obviously talked about Zaire Emery before.
I want to talk about him in a minute, so we'll come back to him.
But he's just a ridiculous footballer, absolutely ridiculous player. But look, mate, PSG just completely dominated the game. It's the sort of performance. Obviously, PSG have had a stop-start season this year. They haven't been consistent. They're not top of Liga, which is weird. But there's more to come from this team. We've talked before about what an exciting summer they had, and we've seen all the signings that they made. They're taking time to blend. When this team takes off, they will be something special. Luis Enrique's got something up his sleeve, I think, as the further we get into this competition, but also into the season generally.
Yeah, I love this midfield 3. I'm a big fan of Agate before he made this move when he was playing in the Primera, and I thought that was a very, very sensible pickup from PSG, considering they felt like they'd lacked that physical presence, perhaps, in the middle of midfield. But Vitinha and Zaire Emery in front of him, it's got to be one of the most exciting pairings in world football at the moment. And the way that the three of them dominated this very hard-working, but also very talented Milan three in the middle. You know, Yunus Musa, I felt looked a bit leggy after that running around for 90 minutes sort of hopelessly against Juventus. And again, hopelessly here isn't a criticism of him. It was just that it felt like Milan were ball chasing for lots of that. Krunic is a very, very capable footballer, and Reinders has been phenomenal since he's joined in the summer. So this was a midfield that you go, okay, here's a test for you, PSG. And as you say, they're growing into this era under Luis Enrique. And he is such a stickler for having teams that work in exact positions and work down the lines and make those patterns and combinations work, that you have to be a pretty special player, I think, to be part of this Luis Enrique midfield. And we're talking about Vitinha, who's in his second season in Paris and is, 23 years old? And Zaire Emery, who is 17. And they look so comfortable in these roles, and the ability to step in. And this was a summer where they lost Marco Verratti. Now, whether you agree with that decision or not, or that Enrique said, you're not going to play for me, Verratti was an unbelievable servant for PSG. And on his day, I think one of the best sort of ball-playing midfielders that we've seen in a long time. You know, you've heard Xavi talk about how he was born to play for Barcelona. He never did, but he was held in that kind of esteem. So for these two to step in here at such tender ages, Zaire Emery in particular, and drop this kind of performance against AC Milan in the Champions League, a team that PSG had never beaten in 4 attempts before tonight in the Champions League across a couple of different seasons, I think is remarkable. And to be honest, it just all credit, because he seems to have found what he wants to do here. Now, there are obviously going to be changes. There's so much talent in this side in Fabian Ruiz and Carlos Soler, who all have a little bit more experience. But actually, watching them play together, it's a delight in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Zaire Emery, like the levels he's playing at for his age is just absolutely stupid. I mean, we've already given La Masia its flowers again in this show, but there's just so many amazing young players here. In fact, I think we should do a pod soon.
Well, some young players that we'd like to talk about. It sounds about right to me. Should we start the roundup? I want to start with the other early kickoff, where Feyenoord beat Lazio 3-1. This was the Santi Jimenez show once again. So obviously he's absolutely on fire in the league. I think he's got 13 in 9 games in the Eredivisie for Feyenoord. He was banned for the first 2 of their games after getting sent off against Roma, of all people, in the Champions League, in the Europa League, in the quarterfinals, I believe. And so he missed the first 2 games, and Feyenoord missed him as well. They didn't really skip a beat when they had to play against 9-man Celtic, but it felt like they missed him in the Atleti game. And you kind of got to tonight, and he went, "Hi, I've arrived on the Champions League stage." He scores twice. He has another one ruled out. He is just such a complete number 9. And we're watching him going, wow, this kid's going to be an absolute superstar. Lazio must be absolutely sick of the sight of him. He scored 3 times in 2 games against them in the Europa League group stages last year. And now he scored another 2 tonight. He goes to Rome in 2 weeks' time. They must be like, get this boy away from me. I want nothing to do with him ever again. He's got 5 in 3 against Lazio. They just might be looking at him going, why us? Why us? But Feyenoord, really good here. Really, really impressive. And have started, obviously missing him in these first 2 games. It did feel like they were lacking something, but suddenly it was like, oh, wow, this team are back again and back doing the right kind of things. Stengs and Paixão on the wings, I thought were excellent. And you look at Paixão, who felt like a bit part player when Feyenoord got to the Conference League final 2 years ago. He came off the bench and everyone was a bit like, who is this random Brazilian winger? And he is kind of upped his game. He's taken over from Alireza Jahanbakhsh as that kind of first choice starter on that wing, and really, really like him. He's a really exciting player, really dynamic, really explosive, makes things happen on a regular basis, and it allows the rest of his team to just really thrive. Feyenoord are great fun, and they're one of the teams in Europe you're like, ooh, should watch more of them. They're loads and loads of fun. There's still a lot of young players in this team, and Arne Slott's doing an absolutely phenomenal job, I think, with them. So yeah, I just wanted to give Feyenoord some flowers. Lazio are a bit of a mess, to be honest. I think they've been bailed out by 2 late goals, obviously in the last 2 games. The equaliser against Atleti from the goalkeeper, which was incredible, but still a bit of a one-off, not going to happen every week. And then Pedro scores a late winner against Celtic, which felt very hard on Celtic after the performance. So for them to, kind of finally get what felt like was coming to them this week, I really can't see how long this experiment continues for at the moment, because whilst I think Lazio are going to struggle to sack Sarri, and we talked about this on the sacking or saving managers episode, they are really struggling. So interesting to keep an eye on what happens there. Man City won 3-1 against Young Boys. Erling Haaland has broken his Champions League duck. He scored a penalty, and then he backed it up by scoring a wonderful third goal as well. But the goal of the game was the Young Boys goal, which actually leveled things up from Meshak Elia. He's had a couple of wonder goals now. And actually, if you look back through Young Boys guys in the Champions League, Elia steps up quite regularly and scores really good goals. This one, he races through on goal. Ederson comes flying out to meet him. And he just lifts it beautifully over him. So calm. Absolutely cuts Manchester City apart. Brilliant goal. But yeah, City relatively comfortable once they'd got back in the lead. Had another one disallowed, which was a bit unfortunate, to be honest, because it was a really good goal. But Haaland made sure of it late on, and City march on. No bother. But it looked a bit shaky for a little while. And to be honest, it looked a little bit shaky in both of their games so far, right? They've gone behind, they've had moments, but they are there, and they are 9 points from 9, and they are comfortable. So yeah, shouts out to City.
Celtic, I thought we were going to pick up a famous win, but they didn't, did they?
Hard this, because Celtic scored 2 absolutely sensational goals, like really brilliant stuff. The first goal that Kyogo scores it's a sublime piece of team play to cut through Atleti, and then they get done by a bit of a stupid penalty to give away. Griezmann misses. Well, Joe Hart tips the penalty onto the post. It's a really good save, but it comes straight back out to Griezmann, who tucks it away, no bother. He gets 2 bites of the cherry, and it's a bit like that happened. And you're kind of looking at it going, what comes next? And Celtic go right back up the other side. And Lewis Palmer, who was denied a goal by the offside flag, not against him, but against Dyson Maida in the Lazio game when it was 1-1, and he thought he'd won the game for Celtic, and the place absolutely went mad. He got his moment this time. It's another absolutely sublime finish. He is fast becoming one of those players that you just kind of need to keep an eye on. And he is, I will give him this, the little Honduran is making that loss of Jota in the summer look okay. And that's a big, big praise from kind of anyone associated with Celtic, because he was so good, Jota. But Lewis Palmer's come in and he's slowly kind of, okay, we've got another one. And it's really cool. It's a good midfield of Hatate, McGregor and O'Reilly. Was a little bit unlucky, Hatate, in that he picked up what looks like a little bit of a knock. Rodrigo de Paul gets sent off late on. Atleti equalised. It's a really good header from Morata. Brilliant play again from Griezmann. Morata makes it count. Rodrigo de Paul gets sent off with sort of 10 minutes to go. And Celtic it looks like it's like, oh, could you push through this? Could it stick? And the ball just wouldn't fall in the final third. There were scuffles, there were scrambles. Atleti sort of started to slow the game down, as you absolutely would. This is not a criticism. You have to do that when you're down to 10 and you're scrapping for your lives. But a shame that Celtic couldn't pick up all 3 here, because it really did feel like an opportunity. They remain bottom of the group, 1 point. Feyenoord now top on 6, Atleti on 5, Lazio on 4. But I think Celtic will still fancy their chances against Lazio. They know that Feyenoord have to come to Celtic Park. I'm not 100% sure they're going to look at the game against Atleti and think they can get anything. But I wouldn't put it against Celtic overtaking Lazio for that Europa League spot. So there's enough to keep people interested in that group as well. I'll go to Antwerp, who lost 4-1 to Porto. They took the lead, Antwerp, and it was really quite poor defending from Porto in some ways. But Evan Nielsen, who's been kind of off the scene for a little while, he hasn't been making the waves that he was perhaps at this point last year. We were talking last January about the fact that Manchester United were thinking about trying to sign him. And at the time, I think we said, don't do that. It's a bit early. It's he's had a really good season, but let's not explode into anything too drastic right now, especially for the prices that were being quoted. But he scores a really good hat-trick here, a really nice sort of complete hat-trick that people are looking at and going, oh, he can do all of the aspects of this forward play. But Porto were dreadful first 45 from pretty much all aspects. And it really took until 40 seconds after the break, Evan Nielsen equalises. 10 minutes after that, Eustáquio puts them in the lead. And there's no looking back at that point. Porto absolutely hit the accelerator, and they have the capacity to do that. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that this Porto side is, although it had some big hits and some big losses over the last couple of years, there's some real talent in here as well. Winston Galeno's really sort of started to hit his stride. I really like Alan Varela. We talked about with Nathan on that South American Prospects podcast. There's a lot to like about this Porto side. And when they do get into this kind of rhythm, and I do like Taremi and Evan Nielsen up front together, I think they have a really nice thing going on between them. When they get cooking, they're still a very, very good side. And I still make them favourites to get second in this group, even if Shakhtar were good today. And that leaves us with Leipzig against Crvena Zvezda, or Red Star Belgrade. Plain sailing, to be honest. Although, you will add, all three of these Leipzig goals are sensational. Absolutely brilliant. David Raum to begin with. Xavi Simons scores probably the goal of the night across all games. And then Dani Olmo wraps it up in the 85th minute. After Red Star pulled one back through some sort of very weird deflections in the box, etc., etc. But Leipzig had 27 shots and 10 on target, 66% possession. They were in real control, and they continue to cook really nicely. They're having a quiet, under-the-radar season. We talked about Dortmund right at the top. Leipzig are there or thereabouts as well, and there's some really special footballers in this side. We talked about Castillo Lequeba before when he was at Lyon. We talked about Xavi Simons, who is absolutely setting the place on fire. But Lois Openda's having a really good start to his Leipzig career. They have depth in Šeško and Olmo and Werner coming off the bench tonight. They have players like Nicolas Sievold, who I really, really like. Fabio Carvalho, who's barely featured for them. There's a lot to like about the depth in this Leipzig side, and I think they've got what it takes to compete on a couple of fronts this season, and this felt like plain sailing for them, I thought.
Yeah, nice. It's well, you've nailed your roundup as usual, mate. But yeah, it did seem like that. At half time, I wasn't so sure. I was looking through the scores, looking to see if there were any surprises around. I was like, oh, that's quite tight. Only a 1-goal lead, but yeah, they've gone and got the job done. Xavi Simons. Another youngster that is going good, mate. Nice little theme we've had running through this. Some of the stars of tonight and of Tuesday. With so many more years ahead of it, I'm excited to see what we get out of just the rest of this season, let alone the rest of these guys' careers. But yeah, it's been a very, very good night. Honestly,
Messi and Ronaldo have left the building, and the new trees are starting to take root and flourish, aren't they? It feels like everyone's like, ooh, top's available, let's go.
Yeah, it's funny actually.
Exploded.
We started off talking at the beginning of the episode like, oh, it doesn't feel like there's any major storylines. And you start digging through it and you start talking through what you've just seen, and actually you're unearthing you're talking about these players and you're thinking, this is electric. Like the players that we're watching are just ridiculous. Some of the football we've just seen is sublime. And the moments there that we just spent half hour talking about, as have just come so naturally. And it's like, okay, yeah, football's good. We're fine.
Yeah, football's good. Right, after the break, we're going to be talking about all Tuesday's action. Don't go anywhere.
Ah, the sizzle of McDonald's sausage. It's enough to make you crave your favorite breakfasts. Enough to head over to McDonald's. Enough to make you really wish this commercial were scratch and sniff.
And if you're a sausage person, now get 2 satisfyingly savory sausage McGriddles, sausage biscuits, or sausage burritos for just $3.33. Or mix and match. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Looking for a fun way to win 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/play100 and use code PLAY100. That's code PLAY100 at prizepicks.com/play100 for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Welcome back to Champions League Takeaway here on Ranks FC, where we're going to go through Tuesday night's games, pick out some of the highlights and the lowlights, I suppose, considering it wasn't the liveliest day of Champions League action. The two early kickoffs were pretty good, but the 16 in the evening, less so, I think. It wasn't the liveliest night. So we're hoping, at the time of recording, that Wednesdays will be better. But there were some big enough stories and big enough games. You're going to start us off tonight with Manchester United, who picked up their first win of the Champions League campaign. But it wasn't all plain sailing, was it?
Yeah, we don't normally do this. We don't normally split the recording into 2 different days, but tonight we are recording straight on the back of the Tuesday games and the Wednesday games. So as it is, I've just watched Man United beat Copenhagen, and look, the storyline will be that they were saved by the villains of the season, really. Onana has been slandered. Maguire's been smashed from pillar to post all season long. McTominay went through a bit of it as well. But Maguire's popped up with the goal, and Onana's made a penalty save in the last minute that obviously that's going to be the headline. And the commentator even went as far to say, as he made the penalty save, and Bobby Charlton looking down from the skies maybe helps United to this moment. Like, okay, I get it. Like it's an emotional moment here for Man United. It was a big evening. Lovely tributes to Sir Bobby Charlton before the game. The first half did not live up to the Bobby Charlton inspiration at all.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Like, United were just poor, never got going. And I have to say, like, while all the talk for now will be about Maguire saving them with the goal and Onana saving them with a save, they weren't that good, mate. And they've won 3 games in a row now, and it's the most unconvincing 3 wins in a row I've ever seen, potentially. I mean, we are talking here about absolute desperation almost, because you've got a last-ditch moment against Brentford where they scored 2 injury time goals to see them off. Then you've got a 2-1 away win at Sheffield United, which wasn't that convincing. And then here, you play Copenhagen at home in the Champions League, basically looking to try and show that you deserve to be in the competition. And you're dug out by your goalkeeper making a last second save from the penalty spot. I mean, you could say, it shows they've got a mental toughness about them, and it gives them good vibes. Yeah, maybe. But you could say, if you watch the duration of all those 3 matches and judge them over 90 minutes, Man United are absolutely nowhere near it at the moment. And obviously going into a Manchester derby at the weekend, yes, there is a hope for them that they can take the results into that Manchester derby, and they can find some magic within this squad, and that they're inspired because they've won 3 games in a row and they've come up with late moments to seal matches, that they can do it. But I'm sorry, if you analyse the games, United are up against that Manchester derby. But look, I don't want to be too harsh on them because they've won this match, but I just think that it's covering over a massive flaw, and it's that Man United just aren't good enough. I mean, they're barely worthy of being in the Champions League, to be honest, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult evening, I think, for lots of it. And obviously, as you say, it was emotional. And the tributes before kickoff were emotional. We saw Harry Maguire speak really eloquently at the weekend about Sir Bobby Charlton and what he meant to not only Maguire himself, but to the club as a whole. There's a lot in this. And you can imagine that wreath being piped in by the bagpipes and everyone, the moment of silence being impeccably observed. All of it was a lot emotionally, and that will take a turn on the players. It just felt like there were some really strange decisions. Now, as you say, they've won. So some of these decisions will be papered over. But United were really vulnerable defensively, I thought, in the first half. They got caught out on the counter really early on when Copenhagen hit the post. And then, to be honest, didn't create very much. And it did look like Copenhagen were the better team for the majority of that first half. Ten Hag then pulled off Amrabat and he replaced him with Christian Eriksen, and suddenly it was all Copenhagen again. And I was like, I'm not quite sure what he's trying to do. Now, Eriksen grew into the game and he started to control the game as United started to get a foothold. But to begin with, it left them incredibly open. And, as we talk about, there's one thing United winning it is another thing, the fact that they probably should have been 2-0 down by the time that the first goal in this game was scored. And Copenhagen missed a few really, really good opportunities to make that happen. Onana made a brilliant save. And I'll come on to Onana because I think he was, for me, the main positive in this United performance. And sometimes we discuss this kind of thing. When your keeper's your best player, you're probably looking at the defence and going, not sure you've had the day of your lives here. And this isn't an attack, a Copenhagen attack, that have been, particularly potent in the Champions League. Yes, they took the lead against Bayern, and they are very, very good at getting overloads at the back of the box. But generally, you're not looking at this and going, I'm terrified of that attack. And the fact that Onana has had to make this penalty save in the last minute, the narrative, by the way, of Jordan Larsson, Henrik Larsson's son, missing a penalty at the Stretford end is not lost on me, considering the impact that Henrik Larsson had at Manchester United. But that save at the last minute, and also a brilliant save just before United go 1-0 up. And you're just thinking, this isn't great. But Onana can take great heart from his performance. He did everything he was asked to do tonight. There were no obvious errors. And in a competition where I think he's taken the majority of the flack for performances, he's been mostly okay. I think in the Premier League, there have been some clangers, but mostly it's the Champions League ones that have really been held against him. To come out with a performance like that, I saw Carl Anker tweet saying, Andre Onana, you are officially a Manchester United player. And it did feel like a moment for him, the entire team getting round him and celebrating that. And, that is one-on-one. That's mind games. Those are the moments. So maybe that is the launch pad for him. But I think that whilst that is a good thing, and obviously United's keeper is a very important area and one that's been under quite a lot of scrutiny, my question would be around the rest of this team, which still doesn't seem to be functioning in the way that Ten Hag wants it to. And yes, there are injuries. Yes, there are circumstances outside of football that have maybe not allowed Ten Hag to play his best team. But we are looking at a United side that have looked best in transition. And the last time we were talking about that, we were talking about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the fact that it had to change for United to start dominating games. And right now, I can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, Onana owed his teammates a couple of big saves. So it's good that he did have a good game because he was definitely due a big performance. And he had to come up with a good performance soon to show the wider United audience what he's capable of. I mean, not that many United fans would have watched him that many times before now. You and I might have watched Onana play elsewhere in his career. United fans wouldn't really because they support Man United and that's all they really care about. So they might have heard of his reputation, but they need to see those big moments. And finally pulling out a couple of those is good for him. No, I say finally. He has made some good saves across the course of the season, but he's also made more clangers than he has big saves up until now. Look, if you're going to attack anyone from this performance, I'll probably be attacking the attackers. They are so unreliable. They're so unreliable. Like I don't know if it's decision-making, whether it's confidence, whether they're just inept at the moment. But Rashford, Antony, even Garnacho, who I love as a player, but, a chance going through on goal and takes this extra touch, which just didn't need. And you thought he was going to just stick it away like you would. Like, he's a player that normally doesn't let other doubts get into his head. And it seemed like he did in that moment. And United have just had that. Their finishing's been poor for a long time now in attack. And there isn't really any signs of that changing. And when I say that, I don't trust United in terms of turning a corner even after 3 wins in a row, it's because they don't have a reliable goal source. I like what I see from Højlund. I think there were some good moments from him here again in his little touches and his positional play. But he hasn't scored. He still hasn't scored in the Premier League. And Rashford, still not on it. Garnacho I really like, but can't be relied upon yet. Antony's inconsistent. And yeah, it's just the same old problems. Like on the main episode this week, I led it by talking about things I love and talking about Ange Postecoglou and how incredible it is that his philosophy has been mirrored in his players within 9 matches. Here we are, well over a season now of Ten Hag football, and Man United are all over the place. Like, that's just not ingrained in this team at all. And it's been a bit harder because there isn't the consistency of selection available to him. The pairings that they've got all over the pitch are very rarely the same players. So that's difficult, and they haven't ever had their full strength team available this season. But I can't fully use that as an excuse because there should have been an implementation now of his philosophy, and I just don't feel it has been.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think last year there were plenty of signs of life, plenty of signs of progress. And actually, the start of the second year has been almost a regression in many ways for Manchester United. And Ten Hag needs to sort that out pretty quickly, it feels.
But what a great night, mate. What a great night. It's a 1-0 win. Man United fans are listening to me. What's wrong with this bloke? What are you so down on us? Yeah, I just am not convinced that this is the future. But 3 wins in a row, you've got to take it for what it is.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to take us to Seville, where Arsenal beat Sevilla 2-1 at Sanchez Pizjuan. And I have 2 big takeaways. One is that this was Gabi Jesus' night, and it was absolutely glorious. Some of the things that he pulled out here were sublime. And my other big takeaway is that this is a performance that Arsenal showed their mettle again. Now, we talked a bit about the fact that when they played Chelsea at the weekend, on Monday's podcast, and when we were looking back at the weekend, that whilst it was a pretty dreadful performance from Arsenal all round, actually the fact that they pulled out the draw from 2-0 down in the last 10 minutes is pretty good strength of character. And some more of that character that we've said that Arsenal needed to show to prove that they can hang with the big boys in these tournaments. And this was a different type of test, but it was one that I thought they did really well in. So it was a game that also had some emotion attached to it. The first time the sides have met since the death of Jose Antonio Reyes. And he was a good friend of Mikel Arteta's. We've read quite a lot about it. They exchanged jerseys. There was a moment for Reyes, which I thought was really, really nice between the two teams. And so there was that kind of over the top of it. But Arsenal started, I thought, really well. Martinelli probably should have put them 1-0 up pretty early on. And then Jesus just started coming into his own. And just before halftime, he plays through the most sublime assist for Martinelli, who makes up for his earlier error by this time going round the keeper and starting it home. But it's Jesus' magic touch. Absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen it, please go and watch it. It's worth the highlights package on its own, although actually it gets better. This touch just to free Martinelli, send him careering through on goal, and he makes no mistake. A little, link up there between the two Brazilians as well, which is nice. But then Jesus goes one better in the second half. He gets the ball, played out to him by Declan Rice, who also had another good game in an Arsenal shirt. And actually, those games are becoming consistent and regular, and it's rare now that you see him have a game or an off day in an Arsenal shirt, which is pretty good testament to the fact that they spent that much money on him. People aren't talking about it. People are just like, yeah, fine, no worries. He's putting in the performances that kind of fee deserves. But he gets past the ball, Jesus, by Declan Rice, and he's sort of squaring up his man far left of the box towards the corner flag. He stands him up. He goes around him. He whips one inside, and he curls the ball top corner into the other corner of the goal. And it is just a sublime piece of individual quality. He's the first Arsenal player to score in his first 3 Champions League games since Marouane Chamakh, which is about as high an honour as I can possibly give him. What a man Chamakh was. But just generally, Jesus was sensational. And the way that he brings others into play, Arsenal should and probably could have scored more in this game. Ødegaard had a couple of good chances that went begging, but it was all about Jesus. And the difference in this Arsenal side when he is back in the team and back on song is pretty remarkable, I think. And him stepping up today again in a difficult game. We saw Sevilla at the weekend hold Real Madrid 1-1 at the Pizjuan, and we saw them already starting to show signs that they're going to be a kind of tougher nut to crack under Diego Alonso, that they are going to go out, and they talked about the fact that they're seeing games as a battle. They have to go in for each other. They have to go through the blood, as Alonso said in his pre-match team talk. And Arsenal were able to not only go 2-0 up, but then concede a goal and get backs to the wall and see it out. And I was really, really impressed with them across the course of this one, because it would have been easy to collapse, I think, especially in that environment, especially once, the game felt quiet. It felt like they'd silenced the stadium, and suddenly you go back, they get the goal to half the deficit, and Gede heads in from a Rakitic corner. That is a worry. It's another goal that Arsenal have conceded from a set piece this season, but they then dig in and they're able to see it out. And I was really, really impressed with the way that they did so. So credit to Arsenal, credit to Arteta, who also made some smart decisions. He took Saka off after about 70 minutes for the first time. You were like, oh, thank God for that. And just protect that man at all costs. But yeah, I was impressed with Arsenal on a couple of levels, but especially with Gabi Jesus. Sensational.
That's probably their second most impressive win of the season, I'd say, behind the Man City win. That's got to rank as their next best in terms of just the result. But I haven't seen it. I've seen the short highlights of it straight after the United game. But in terms of the performance that they've pulled out, by all accounts, they put a really good spell together at the start of the second half. You're talking about individual displays and people crowing about the displays of Saliba and Gabriel and Jesus. You've talked there about Declan Rice. Jesus, he loves the Champions League anyway. That's 23 goals for him in 41 in the Champions League. Absolutely loves it. A Champions League monster, Gabi Jesus. But yeah, so that would be my big take. I mean, they go top of their group now, don't they? So that's a big moment for them. Being back in this competition was not enough for them. They wanted to make their mark on it properly this season, and they've done it, and Arsenal are properly back now. So they're in there in title contention, and now they're in this conversation in the Champions League and looking like they can make the knockout. So that's a big step forward for Mikel Arteta and in what he's looking to achieve here. Look, there's still going to be the balance that Arteta's got to get right here as we get towards the second half of the season when it comes, because I was writing today actually about Aaron Ramsdale and the whole saga around that, and I don't think he's going to go. There's a lot of talk about Ramsdale leaving in January, and Arsenal seem pretty insistent he's not going anywhere, and I don't think Ramsdale's particularly going to kick up a fuss from what I understand so far. Anyway, that's his opinion right now. Let's see if it's the same when we actually get to January. But it's actually pretty rare that goalkeepers move mid-season. It's also pretty rare, unless there's an injury, that a team actually needs a goalkeeper. And if you say, okay, well, Chelsea want him, well, yeah, Chelsea are interested in Ramsdale, but they have also got Robert Sanchez, and they're not just suddenly going to throw him away and say, right, Ramsdale's now our number one. He'll have exactly the same problem at Chelsea as he's got at Arsenal. He's got to compete for his number one spot. So to get back to what I was talking about, he's got to try and keep people happy within this squad now, and there will come a time when he's got to make a decision. Ramsdale's got to get games at some point, and they're going to be other players within the Arsenal setup that are going to need minutes, because the squad depth is going to be tested at times. But now that they are looking to stay in Europe as well as go for the title, so this is a massive season for Arsenal. And I mean, if you're an Arsenal fan, I mean, you're relishing it. All those dark days you went through watching Arsenal fan TV and just being the laughing stock of football, those days are gone. The glory days are coming back by the looks of things.
Yeah, very, very impressive from Arsenal. My last takeaway last big takeaway at the very least, comes from Benfica 0, Real Sociedad 1. Another bad result for Benfica. They have 0 points after 3 games in the Champions League. And despite relatively good league form, this has not been a kind competition to them. Real Sociedad, though, have been away from this competition for 10 years. And yet, when it came to it and came to this, they're flying. They're having a really, really good campaign. They are top of Group D on goal difference, ahead of Inter, with 3 games played. And they'll look at this and think, cool, we've played away already at Salzburg and Benfica, got back-to-back wins. We drew 1-1 with Inter, and to be honest, should have won that first game at Anoeta. So I don't think they'll be particularly scared about going to San Siro to play Inter. And I think they'll be looking at this and thinking, this is very much within our grasp. They're 4 points clear of Salzburg and 7 points clear of Benfica. And I think that the Champions League last 16 is a very, very realistic possibility here. I would say probability for Real Sociedad. But I just wanted to talk quickly about Brais Mendez, who scored the only goal of the game today. That's 3 in 3 for him. This is his first time ever in the competition. He joined Real Sociedad last year from Celta Vigo, and he is loving it. Do you talk about Champions League monsters? And I'm sure we'll talk about Jude Bellingham when we do the roundup. But we need to talk about Brais Mendez because he is quickly turning into one of the stories of the group stage. Real Sociedad are one of the stories of the group stage. And he is so brilliant in this system. And the way that this works and the way that Real Sociedad are set up at the moment under Alguacil, it's so impressive. And they're doing quite a lot of this without a kind of recognized number 9. Barnechea, Oyarzábal kind of dipping in and out of these areas, but Brais Mendez breaking forward from that kind of number 10 role is doing a lot of work in there as well. And he's the one getting on the end of things. Now, Taki Kubo, we know, likes to come inside from that right-hand side onto his left foot. He hit the bar again. There is very little that Taki Kubo can't do. I'm absolutely obsessed with him. Just watching him and watching what he brings to a table on a regular basis for this side is just quite something. And I think that it's only a matter of time before there is a massive offer on the table for his services. And I've said it before, but if Liverpool are looking for a long-term Salah replacement, I think he's the closest thing that you could get to that kind of player who likes to cut inside off that right wing, take things on his left foot and make things happen. He is so brilliant. And he was excellent again tonight. But Mendes kind of moving forward into that gap that vacates because Oyarzábal likes to drop deep. Barnechea likes to come inside off his left wing, but you wouldn't say he's an out-and-out striker. He's played a little bit there. It just is a really nice sort of rotating front four. And they've been really brilliant. Now they've got a couple of options here. They have Umar Sadiq. Obviously, we saw them make a couple of signings in the summer in this area as well. Andre Silva, who hasn't really played very much. He's been beset with all sorts of issues. But just generally, I thought they were brilliant tonight. And whilst Benfica huffed and puffed, it did feel like apart from the first 15, 20 minutes, Real Sociedad gained control of this. And I've been so immensely impressed with them. And Mendes in particular, who obviously is 26 years old now. He spent a good part of his early career at Celta. He was there, sort of broke through as a 21-year-old. And then suddenly was kind of here and you're like, ooh, okay, he's got this moment to kind of shine. And he scored, I believe, his debut in the Europa League again. And you might remember this. It was against Manchester United at Old Trafford, I think. And now has gone to the Champions League and is shining again. And it's just another wonderful Spanish midfielder who people should have eyes on because he is a real talent and a serious footballer.
Mate, you've done well to watch 3 games in that much detail tonight. So congratulations to you. How did you manage it?
Well, I triple screened. And then obviously there were 6 games. I triple screened. I assumed that you were going to be doing Manchester United. So I kept that on sort of via the goal show. And then I had these 2 games on different screens.
Fine.
But I watched both of the early kickoffs as well. I want to just talk about them briefly. And we do the roundup. Inter 2-1 against RB Salzburg. And this was a really good game. Actually, both of the early kickoffs were. This was a really good game. Alexis Sanchez scored the first goal of his second spell at Inter in the first half. And it's a really good assist from Davide Fratesi, who actually goes on to win the penalty for the goal that eventually wins into the game and sets up a third goal, which is ruled offside by the most fractional of margins. It's so small. And he would have had a hat-trick of assists, which is a little bit of a shame. But Salzburg were fun, and Oscar Gluck, who is someone we've talked about in this podcast before because Sam really rated him after the under-19 European Championships last year. He shone at that tournament, and he earned this move to Salzburg. First year wasn't great for him, but he scored a brilliant goal here to level it up. And Inter sort of fought through it. They fought through a bad spell. They got the second goal. They nearly got a third, and then they retreated into their shell a little bit, and they were a little bit lucky towards the end of this just to hang on. But you can see all of the experience just coursing through this Inter side when it comes to these kind of moments, and they got the job done. And the other one was Galatasaray, who lost 3-1 at home to Bayern, which sounds like a pretty routine victory. It wasn't at all. It was one of those performances that you watch Bayern, you're like, you're just a bit tepid. They had 15 really good minutes at the start and 15 really good minutes at the end, and they made it count. It was a really clever little move from Jamal Musiala that put Leroy Sané through, and then he teed up Kingsley Coman to give him the lead. But then it was just all Galatasaray for like 60 minutes. And there was a couple of horrible misses from various players in this Galatasaray side. But they then won a penalty, and it's a really good penalty. You should watch it. It's Mauro Icardi, who, unfazed by the fact he missed a penalty against Manchester United, just Panenkas it. But it's the most delicate Panenka you will see in a long time. It's really beautiful. He then has a couple of other chances. He has a header, which he probably should score, and another one that falls to him in the box. He rolls just wide of the post. Came out after the break. It was all Galatasaray. Again, loads of unease in this Bayern defence. They were 6s and 7s for lots of it. But eventually, just as it kind of looked like that group stage record was in real danger of falling apart, they work the ball into the box for Harry Kane, who just chips it home at the second attempt. Kane has 17 goal involvements for Bayern already this season. And then minutes after that, he wins the ball on the edge of the box, plays in Jamal Musiala, makes no mistake. 3 wins from 3 for Bayern. But they were made to work hard for this one. And it wasn't a vintage performance from them by any stretch of the imagination. Galatasaray are going to be a real handful for anybody. And, to go back to the Manchester United point, Gala play like this against Manchester United, I think they win.
Yeah, I watched the first half, and it felt like a bit of a weird game. I mean, Bayern basically scored with their first chance, didn't they? Which seemed like an ominous moment, but Gala managed to get themselves back in it with the pen, and clearly it got away from them in the end. But you would expect Bayern to win a game like that. Bayern should be the favourites to win this group. But yeah, Galatasaray are definitely an interesting proposition for actually managing to get through here, and it definitely keeps things lively, let's say, as we head into the latter stages of the group.
Yeah, let's roll up the other ones. Union Berlin lost 1-0 to Napoli. 9 games now, Union have lost in a row in all competitions, and they were a little bit unlucky here. They were the better side in the first half by all accounts, and the goal that undoes them is an absolutely sublime piece of skill from Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. And he, again, stands up his man on the edge of the box, comes back to him at the second attempt, and he just skins Christopher Trimmel down the outside, works it in, keeps it in play, nibbles down the byline. Do you remember there was a brilliant goal that Real Madrid scored a couple of years back, and Benzema sort of wiggled down the goal line and then nipped it back, and Isco scored.
Yeah.
Pretty much like a carbon copy of that goal. Just brilliant from Maradona, like living up to his nickname in fine style here. And is Giacomo Raspadori who puts it away. He's stepping up as well in this absence of Victor Osimhen. So yeah, I just thought that it was a nice one. It's nice to see Kvicha back at his very best. He was brilliant at the weekend against Verona. He was good in that Udinese game just before the international break, and now a match-winning performance here against Union Berlin. But again, the Union fans unveiled a banner, obviously playing at the Olympia Stadion instead of their homes, basically being like, we need our home ground as much as we need the air that we breathe. And another message sent to them sent to UEFA by the Union fan base. But they were still brilliant here. They made so much noise. The scarves along the wall of the Olympia Stadion is a sight to behold. So yeah, shouts out the Union fans who have not lost their love for their side, despite the fact that they are on probably the worst run across the entirety of Europe right now. So, yeah, shout out to the fans.
Romance ain't dead.
No, Real Madrid won 2-1 against Braga. Do you want to take a guess at who scored?
Jude's back, isn't he?
It's just such a good goal. And there's the goal to make it 2-0. Actually, the first goal is really good as well. It's Vinicius in doing some really, really nice bits and crossing for Rodrigo. And both of those players are a bit under the pump, to be honest, this season, I've thought. And a lot of those players, a lot of people questioning how good they've been. But Vinicius absolutely does his man down the flank. He stops the ball and goes to almost standing position. And then when he explodes off that right foot, he's just uncatchable. He slides it across and Rodrigo does the rest. But the second goal is so brilliant. It's Vinicius again down that flank. He rolls it back for Jude. And Bellingham just sort of passes it into the corner. It's so calm and cool and collected. Just ridiculous. It's now, I think, 12 goals and 3 assists in 13 appearances for Real Madrid.
Nice.
Stunning numbers. Braga made it hard, actually, and credit to them, because a lot of teams would crumble at 2-0 down to Real Madrid. They got one back, and another really good goal, really well worked, and they made them work right for the end of this, which is going to be interesting in terms of what it has on the Clásico at the weekend, and whether Real Madrid were able to really rest as many players as they maybe would have hoped for at 2-0 up. But yeah, Jude again. He is him in so many ways. Lens drew 1-1 with PSV, and the goal that Lens scored, the equaliser, is excellent. Actually, both goals in this game are really brilliant. Johan Bakayoko, who's had a bit of a tough time of it. He hadn't scored for a long time, and he's now got 3 in his last 3 for PSV. But he scores a brilliant goal, cutting off that right-hand side onto his left foot, curls one into the far corner. But the equaliser is from El Yawahi, and he's on a bit of a streak of form as well since joining Lens. And it was big shoes to fill, going into Lois Openda's shoes there. And he did really, really well. It's a really good volleyed finish to make this one. So, yeah, shouts out to Lens, because they've had a pretty tough start to the year in terms of their league campaign. It's pretty much opposites, right? PSV have flown in the Eredivisie. They've won every single game that they've played so far. Obviously, they play Ajax at the weekend. But Lens have had a tough start in the league, but have done pretty well in Europe. They've drawn 2 and won 1 now. I think they're second in the group behind Arsenal. PSV are yet to win in Europe, and they were dragged back again here to 1-1. So contrasting fortunes for these two in terms of their domestic and European form. But yeah, worth pointing out. But Dean, before we go, it would be unfair to not reference the biggest game that actually happened tonight, which was the Ranks FC derby in the Southern Premier League. So for those of you that don't know, Dean and I both have non-league teams. Dean is an avid fan of Walton and Hersham FC. You might have heard him talking about them on the podcast, whilst around the corner from me is Hanwell Town. And the two sides met tonight at the Power
You got a bit excited, didn't you?
I got a bit excited because Hanwell took the lead. So before kickoff, Walton and Hersham were 4th and Hanwell were 14th. And I got a bit excited when we took the lead against them. And I tweeted and texted Dean, only for Dean to say, well, it doesn't matter, we're a second half team anyway. Unfortunately, it came true. 2 goals for Walton and Hersham. And the Geordies, or the London Geordies, as Hanwell are known, were consigned to a 2-1 defeat in W7. Gutting, absolutely gutted.
Yeah, I mean, Walton and Hersham have got a bit of a reputation this season of being comeback kings, especially late in games. But yeah, you did get a bit excited. You just sent the score, actually sent it to the Rank Squad WhatsApp group. So Sam got it as well. So Sam saw it and said, oh my God, why isn't this on TV? You just sent the score line, didn't you? A little picture of the, I presume it's from like Live Score or something.
What's from Live Score?
I said, don't worry, we're usually better second half. And literally 2 minutes later, you write back, oh, you've just equalised. And that was Eddie Simon, Super Eddie Simon for Walton Hersham. Then they bagged the winner. Yeah. Well, mate, neither of us were there. We should have both gone to that, really. Maybe when it's at Walton, can you please come?
If it's on a weekend, we'll make it happen. It's quite annoying that they decided to have a game this big and this gargantuan.
That is a bit silly.
On a Champions
League
silly. Night, because they knew that we weren't going to be able to cover both.
Yeah,
a little bit gutting, but here we are.
We'll do a live pod from Walton and Hersham against Hanwell Town.
Well, I think, mate, that's all we've got time for. So the only thing left for me to do is say thank you very much to our transfer guru, everything guru, pal of the Rank Squad, Mr. Dean Jones.
Rank Squad guru out.
I've been Jack Collins, name of hearts. This has been your Ranks FC Champions League takeaway, looking at all of the action across Tuesday and Wednesday in the Champions League this week. We will see you next week, gang. Take it easy. Peace.
Hey parents, Greenlight is here to take one big thing off your to-do list, teaching your kids about money. With a Greenlight debit card and money app of their own, kids and teens learn to earn, save, and invest. You can send money instantly, set flexible controls, and get real-time notifications of your kids' money activity. Set up chores and put allowance on autopilot to reward them for their hard work. Then learn about the world of money together. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.